Welcome back. On Christmas Eve, the U.S. Postal Service changed the rules on how postmarks are processed, and that may have a bigger impact on your life than you realize, especially with tax season on the horizon. Joining me to discuss the change is Dr. Brian Marks, the Executive Director of the Entrepreneurship and Innovation Program at the University of New Haven. Welcome.
Thank you for having me, Eric.
So tell me about this change. It was announced on Christmas Eve, and it was a change to a wonky post office policy manual, as I understand it. Probably not something that any of our viewers, keep up to date on with changes, but it could have a big impact. Tell me what's happening.
Well, the devil is always in the details. And in fact, there was a rulemaking process here within the post office system. There was notice, they received comments, or not many comments, quite frankly, because no one was really paying much attention to this. In light of this change, it could be quite significant. So we need a little bit of history, and then we can move forward. And the history is we've all been used to going to the post office or going to a post box, dropping it in a blue box, and expecting that we've now delivered it within the postal system. The mail would be picked up, it would be stamped, and we've satisfied our obligations, whether it's for a bill, whether a judicial filing, whether it's for tax season, and importantly, and something that's been at the forefront of many people's minds, are election issues. So that gives you just the overall insight of what's could be impacted.
Certainly a lot at stake. I want to go through a few of those. And you mentioned, just that idea. So what the post office is saying is that instead of when you drop it in the mailbox being the postmark date, it's the time it is first processed by the post office is when they'll be marking it. So that big change to how that gets on there is what's at stake here, right?
Yes. So let's understand this, that you go to a local post office, that doesn't involve automated processing. So it's a delay potentially, depending on where you drop your mail off. It could be 1 to 2 days before, in the normal course of business, it would receive that postmark. That's a critical change. We're used to it's postmark. No, here it's going to require that automated processing. Now, there's a way to get around that aspect of it, which imposes a cost on everyone who uses the mail service. And that is the following. You have to go inside, go to the desk, and have the envelope manually stamped with the postmark. Subtle change. Some people view the change as no big deal. But if you're in one of those areas where it's not regional processing for automation purposes and sorting, and you're at a local post office, you're going to have to go inside.
So let's break that down, though, for what that might mean for our viewers. So one of the things that comes to my mind is rent. A lot of tenants saying that I got to get that rent check in the mailbox by the 1st of the month or the 10th, depending on their lease, and knowing that when the landlord receives it, whenever they get it, it'll have that postmark saying that date. Those folks now, instead of going to a blue mailbox or putting it in their rural mailbox with the flag up, they now have to go inside and get that stamp to ensure that, right?
I would recommend that to ensure it, as well as during this period of time. My hope would be landlords and others would be a little more accommodating for their tenants. Let's use that as an example, as far as people adjust to this new system.
Now, I saw in that article, there was an article written in the CT Insider papers last week, which was a great breakdown of this. And if our viewers want to see more, I encourage them to go check that out. But there was a CPA who was interviewed in that piece, and they called this a pending nightmare. Do you agree? And what are your thoughts on how this will affect folks?
Well, when you make a change, I always tell people, and I tell my students this too, I'm a game theorist, you change the rules, you change the outcome. So during a transition period, there are going to be significant bumps in the road. No ifs, ands, or buts about that. We'll see longer lines at the post office. We'll see people frustrated. We'll see people who aren't even aware of this subtle change, its impact, that their mail may not get postmarked, not just 1 day, 2 day. It could take 3 or 4 days, especially with manpower shortages, before it hits that automated system. So I think that CPA is absolutely correct. He's concerned about tax season, and I understand that, and electronic filing will become at the forefront for many more people if they're concerned about this. But you can look at all the other avenues in which we rely on postmarks to determine whether something has been legitimately sent in a timely manner.
Well, I want to talk. We've talked about rent. We've talked about taxes. I want to talk to you about voting, because that's such a big topic of conversation in general. That could also be one where we have to, especially with absentee ballots and things like that, we really are going to have to see how this plays out on our next election day, right?
Yeah, and that to me is the elephant in the room with respect to this change. Given all the consternation regarding the last series of federal and state elections and the challenges, we are going to see potentially more ballots discarded because the postmark will show a date that's one day Tuesday, could even be 5 days later before it gets to one of the automated processing regional centers. So to mitigate that, I would tell those who are actively engaged in the election, you need to drop that mail earlier, but go inside, because there's no guarantee that counting 2 days will be sufficient. But we can expect this election season, there'll be a lot of ballots that are going to be challenged simply on the postmark.
It'll certainly be interesting to see how it plays out. Having been in and around local news for a million years, I know every April 15th we do those stories of people running to the post office with that mail at 11:45, going to one of the branches that are still open, trying to get that postmark. Maybe more people will be running inside to do that. Brian Marks, thank you so much for being with us. We appreciate it, and hopefully we'll have you back on the show again soon.
Thank you for having me.